right? Dakshinayana to Uttarayana, the path, right? If you recollect. Now, during this transition phase, one is of course the scientific explanation, right, that happens. But the second part is because of this transition that happens, it will impact our health. Typically, when there is a change in the weather, all of us will fall sick, isn't it? Whenever there is transition, you go to a ENT doctor in June, July, they make a lot of business at that time. ENT, right? Because that's a transition, right? Not many people are able to connect. So to get ready for the transition, you look at the kind of dish that we prepare during Makara Sankranti. Just as an instance I'm talking about, right? That's our pongal and other things. Basically, if you really look at it, that's our cultural value that our ancestors have given, saying that you should get ready, your body should get ready for the transition that you are having. That's the cultural aspect. This will have an impact on our health and well-being again. And health and well-being, I'll talk about those sustainable development goals. You may be wondering, why am I emphasizing more on that? In a while, I'll talk about it. Right? The culture, and all of us, to be honest, do we take pride in our own culture? The current generation, they feel that, why should we do this? Which is absolutely fine. You have every right to question, but you should know why we are doing it. But not at the same time being ignorant of the fact that why should we do it, right? We should all respect our culture, because cultural values have a strong impact on our sustainability. And this is not what we are saying in India. That's another thing, right? It's all narrative in India, but it's across the globe, right? The other aspect which is relevant for all of us in the management discipline is, how many of you are familiar with triple bottom line? How many of you are familiar with triple bottom line? Nobody. Okay. I'll ask you one simple question. Now, if I'll give you 3 organizations in one specific industry, if I ask you, tell me which company is doing well, what will you do? What data will you look for? What data will you look for? Revenues, isn't it? Or profit. Typically, we look at the financial statements. Is that the only parameter that we can use? Is a big question mark. Right? No problem. I'll pause for a few seconds till you guys settle down. Thank you. I think it's a good gesture. So okay. So typically, what we do is we look at only the financial performance. But right now, what we are saying, this, by the way, triple bottom line is not a new concept as such. It has been there from early 1990s in different formats. So what we are saying right now is, if at all I want to look at a performance of any organization, let me not look at only the profitability alone, but I want to look at what is the impact of organization on planet and people. And if you're on first year or second year, I forgot to ask. First year, okay. So probably once you start doing your dissertation or internship, you'll have to analyze the financial information, right? These days, if you look at some of the large companies, corporates, they're all publishing integrated reporting. It's not financial reporting, if you observe it, right? This integrated reporting talks about not just on the financial performance, we also look at the planet and people, right? So there are 2 perspectives with which we need to look at it. One, how do we are not going to push businesses basically to be sustainable despite they are not earning profit, right? This is one of the problems that we have in India. And I get to face a lot of those questions because when I go and talk to organizations to look at sustainability, they'll say, "Sir, paisa hi nahi hai hamare liye. We don't have profitability, and you're thinking about people and planet, right?" But it's the other way around. If you really focus on planet and people, your profitability will also go up. And again, this is proven through research. Look at any company, for example, right? One of the areas of sustainability is energy, right? When we look at energy, if you're able to reduce your expenses of your energy management, obviously your operational cost will also come down. Once your operational costs come down, it will have an impact on your profitability. All are interrelated. Let's not have that myopic view saying that sustainability is a philosophy. We are not going to look at it from a business perspective. There's a huge opportunity for us to drive that. The second aspect, first aspect is how do I drive even profitability with people and planet? Second aspect is if I'm profitable, what am I going to do with that on the people and planet? This is something that all of you should analyze. I hope you are getting the point, right? Two perspectives. One, on the profit part of it, how do I make use of people and planet to have a better profitability? Second thing is once I have profitability, what is it that I'm trying to do with people and planet? Right? Those who are interested, please download those integrated reports, especially of Tata. Any Tata group, if you look at it, they've done a pretty good integrated reporting where they have commitment to environment, they have people, and what do they do? Right? Those parts is something which is important for you as MBA graduates, right? So coming to SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, why did we have these goals, right? If you remember the balancing act of economy, environment, and then social, right? All of us have to do the balancing act, but how do we do that? One of the ways through which we could do is by adopting this particular framework of Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 Sustainable Development Goals which were identified in the year 2015, and then we have to achieve them by 2030. And if you look at each of these goals, right, health and well-being is what I was talking about. It is there in goal number 3. If you look at all these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, it encompasses everything. It is not just restricted to environment. Do we have only environment-related goals here? This is exactly the point that I was mentioning earlier, that it's a myopic view to look at sustainability only from the environment perspective, right? It goes beyond that. If you look at it, a lot of them are connected with social, a lot of them are connected with economy, right? And it is a sort of a global framework that we need to adopt, right? They're broad in nature, and those who are interested, I can share. For every goal, there are targets. In total, we have got about 169 targets across these 17 goals, where you and me can achieve in one or the other way. We can contribute. There are 3 stakeholders who are required to achieve these. One, you and me as individuals and society. Second is government. Third is corporate. All these 3 key stakeholders are important for us to drive this, right? And you can look at those 169 targets and look at how we can do as individuals, right? And if you're familiar with this, believe me, a lot of organizations are really looking at putting these 17 goals into action, right? You go to any organization, if you go to any of the embassy properties, right? I think they don't have malls, if I'm not wrong. It's all typically office space, etc. If you go to Manyata Tech Park, that is managed by embassies, right? If you look at the entrance, there's a huge display of what are they trying to do with sustainability, sustainable development goals. So everybody is looking at how do I put these goals into action, right? Whether they want it or not, they have to do it, right? How many more years to achieve those goals? When are we going to achieve those goals? 2030. Literally, we have 5 years, less than 5 years, right? This is where we stand as of last year. Only 16% of them are on track. That means all of us have to accelerate. These are across 17 goals, right? This is across the globe. None of them are in green color. That means on track, right? As individual goals. But the ray of hope that we have is, if you look at goal number 3, goal number 5, goal number 7, and goal number 9, at least these 4 are moderately improving. And this is where our GHG emissions that we talked about comes into play, right? What are these GHG emissions? Especially goal number 7 is affordable and clean energy. Why is it important? Let me explain in simple terms, right? GHG emissions. GHG emissions are nothing but greenhouse gas emissions, right? So I call that as family of emissions, right? We have CO2, methane, etc. There are about 15, 16 varieties of emissions out there. And if you put all of them together, it's a family of emissions, and we call it as GHG. Now, in this classroom, is there anybody from a place which hits temperature of 45 degrees during summer? Right? Which place?
Gulbarga.
Gulbarga, right? Gulbarga. Most of you are from Gulbarga, right? Let's say, what's your name?
Sangamesh.
Okay, Sangamesh takes us to Gulbarga in May, right? Let's assume that he invites, and there's a huge temple in his name itself, right? Sangamesh. Sangamesh is quite common name in that area, Sangameshwara, right? So let's say that there's some event that he wants all of us to attend, and we go to Gulbarga in May, and he will put you in a nice hotel room, but he says that AC is not working and fan is not working, and since you have come for some event, there's a ritual that when you sleep you have to put on at least 10 blankets and sleep. What will happen to you?
Suffocation, sir.
Suffocation, we start sweating profusely, isn't it? And there'll be heat stroke, this and that, all of it. That is exactly what we are doing with our Mother Earth right now. Those blankets that I talk about are nothing but our GHG emissions. Variety of GHG emissions. There's a sun, there's a heat that is coming in. And there's a heat which is generated because of our activities and the emissions, right? It has to go back, isn't it, to the atmosphere. There are multiple layers. I will not get into the technicality of it. But the heat is not going back because we have these blankets of emissions which are covered up our Mother Earth. So what will happen is the heat gets trapped, just the way in which our heat gets trapped under the blankets. Our Mother Earth heat is also trapped. And that's why we say ice is melting. Global warming is a result of it. Now, what should we do? If you look at these emissions, right, GHG emissions, 70% of these GHG emissions come from energy industry, burning of coal and fossil fuel. That's why goal number 7, which is affordable and clean energy, is very important. We need to find a way out. How do we manage our energy requirements? There are 3 things, according to me, we should do. 1, I'm sure wherever you have gone, you would have seen, please switch off the lights while going out of this room or boardroom, etc., when not in use. One of the research indicated that nearly 15% of the total energy is used only for lighting across the globe. Imagine if we start putting off the lights whenever not in use. Even if 50% of us do that, we are going to reduce from 15% to 7.5%. Huge impact that you can create, number 1. Number 2, let's start buying machinery which are more energy efficient. Third thing is, let's start focusing more on generating our energy from clean sources. That's why if you look at this year's Nirmala Sitharaman's budget, there's a specific, last year also she mentioned, this year also there is an emphasis on nuclear reactors. We can generate power or energy using nuclear reactors. And in fact, Narendra Modi, when he visited France recently, we also talked about how do I bring in, because France has that kind of a technology through which we can establish a small scale nuclear reactor. in the Indian context, we should all be proud that we committed, right? By 2030, 50% of our energy requirement will be met through clean sources of energy. We committed, and we are already 2025. Almost 40 to 45% of our energy is currently generated using clean energy. It could be solar, hydro, or wind, right? So that's why we are able to, fairly do well. But that's important. Energy, if you're able to manage energy, 70% of GHG emissions can be managed, right? How do we do that? This is in the Indian context, right? Ray of hope is goal number 1 and goal number 4. We are doing well. Rest of them are pretty good, right? Except the fact that we have goal number 11 and 13, which are declining. Goal number 11 talks about sustainable cities and communities. Why we are not doing well is because we don't have pipe to water connection, right? If you go to Bangalore, exterior of Bangalore, right, on the outskirts, the apartments that are being built, they don't have a piped water connection, due to which we are, suffering there. Climate action, goal number 13, is because we are unable to reduce the GHG emissions across the industries, right? All right. So now, with the SDGs in mind, you might be thinking that, well, this is good to know, sustainability, sustainable development goals, but what are we doing in the corporate, right? What are the opportunities that we have to drive this, right? One is at the individual level, we should be responsible, but at the same time, how do we drive that responsibility in the corporate, right? So that specific framework we have is ESG, right? ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. E, S, and G, right? What is this ESG? If you look at sustainable development goals, as I said, they're broad in nature, right? 17 goals, but how do we translate them into action in a corporate environment? To do that, we use this ESG as a framework, right? So basically, ESG acts as a framework or a guideline for an organization to drive those broad 17 sustainable development goals. That's number 1, right? Number 2, we also look at, basically this I will skip this, right? The other aspect of ESG is sustainability is a risk as well as an opportunity for organizations, and we need to assess that. Any new project which is coming up, everybody will have their own way of looking at it, right? Sometime back in Bangalore, there was a huge debate on steel flyover. Do you guys remember that? Steel bridge, right? Did that take off? Right? There's always a sort of ifs and buts in those kind of projects. Similar to that, any organization that we are looking at or operating, we need to look at ESG, which does the assessment. And by the way, it is sort of must now or a mandatory framework that organizations need to have. Otherwise, there are implications. In the Indian context, we are slowly becoming more aware about it and demanding. But in the rest of the world, right, if you are dealing with the customers outside of India, they're all looking at your ESG strategy. Do you have that in place? Especially Europe, in last 2021 till 2024, number of regulatory requirements that have emerged only in sustainability is more than 430 regulations. Can you imagine? 430 regulations, and you have to comply with. As we speak, yesterday and day before yesterday, European Union Commission is in India, if you have read the newspaper, right? European Union Commission, the entire representation of 27 countries who are part of EU, they are in India. One of the objectives of they being in India is EU has become extremely stringent when it comes to sustainability and ESG, due to which we are being affected in the Indian context, right? We're all exporting the products to EU because of our standards, right? For example, there's something called as CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. Let's say I have this PowerPoint presenter and I want to sell this to Europe, right? If I want to sell this and I'm manufacturing it in India, they will tell me how much of carbon tax I need to pay. even to export it to them, because they want to ensure that my carbon footprint is as minimum as possible. If you go to Pune industrial area, do you think they'll be able to afford to look at carbon footprint and then pay the tax? MSMEs in India have their own problems. On top of it, these things are coming in, right? How do we address that? So ESG has become a huge opportunity rather than a challenge, according to me, to all of you right now. If you're able to understand what can you do across these three pillars of ES and G, right? Please do get familiar with the reports. There are all the reports which are available on companies' website. If you're able to understand what companies are doing, right, to mitigate the risks and how can they make use of the opportunity that is coming in, right? So let's see some of the important things under environment. What all is covered, right? It's more of energy, climate, waste, biodiversity, etc. And when it comes to environment, I find this acronym called WWE, right? I'll talk about it maybe in the next slide. Under environment, what should you be knowing, right? You have something called as circular economy. Somebody said recycling, right, in the beginning. Recycling is nothing but part of a circular economy. Earlier, what used to happen is, I used to design a product, manufacture it, use it and dispose it off. So we used to say cradle to grave, right? But right now, what is happening is, once it reaches end of life, it has to come back to the beginning of the value chain. You know value chain, right? What is value chain? How many of you read newspapers, by the way, every day? At least you read in shorts, no? Yeah. But you should start reading newspapers. Right? If you can't read a physical print form, at least you can subscribe to ET or any of those apps which are there, isn't it? Basically, it will give you an overview of what's happening. Otherwise, whatever is happening in MP Birla, you think this is the world, but there's outside world as well. Right? So you need to get connected. Value chain is nothing but an organization. Every process that you move from one process to another process, there's a value that we add. When we extract raw materials, let's say aluminum, right? Aluminum goes to automobile industry and it becomes a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, right? So there is a pressing process that happens in manufacturing unit. That's a value addition, right? From a sheet of aluminum, it becomes a door or it becomes a fuel tank. That's the value addition. We call the whole process as value chain, right? So if you look at the entire value chain, once, for example, this PowerPoint presenter, does it work for my entire lifetime? Till I die, will it work? Right? After 1 year, it stops working. What do I do with this? I just dispose it off. But right now, what we are saying is, if this is manufactured by Amazon, right? They have to look at how can I reuse this? How can I recycle it? How can I refurbish it? Can I provide an extended life to it? That's our circular economy. Once it reaches end of life, it has to become an input entire value chain. Right? That's why we say cradle to cradle. There are 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours, so many hours people are adding, right, to circular economy. And that's why, and believe me, circular economy is in our DNA, which we don't know, at least in India, right? While I was growing up now also, right? This shirt that I wear today will become a shirt that I can wear at home, right? After it, is not in a right shape, it will become a cleaning cloth at home, isn't it? We use to the extent that till the last yarn, it says that please leave me, I'm dying, right? Till then we use, isn't it? Your mom uses that at home, isn't it? That's our circular economy. It's part of our DNA. But, whatever we do, right? If an Indian speaks, not many people will listen. But if a Western world comes and says, this is circular economy, everybody says, wow, let's do it, right? Circular economy is something which is part of our DNA, but we need to practice it. There's something called as life cycle assessment. that you need to know in the environment. What it does is, whatever I'm manufacturing, I need to look at what's its impact to the environment, entire life of that particular product. How many of you own two-wheeler or use two-wheeler here? Everybody uses, right? It will analyze, LCA will analyze right from the extraction of raw material to make your two-wheeler till it gets dismantled, recycled. What is the impact that it is going to create to the environment? That there's a tool which is available, but it's all in the Western context. In the Indian context, we are yet to develop it. We are still using the database of Western context, right? So somebody who is interested to look at what is the impact that I make, because of my product, we should be able to use this, right? LCA, life cycle assessment. And I call this WWE model. How many of you like World Wrestling Federation? It used to be WWF earlier, yes, and now it is WWE. It has become entertainment, right? All of them will be wrestling with each other, isn't it? We are also wrestling with sustainability now. That's why I call it as WWE model. First W stands for water, second W stands for waste, and E stands for energy. If you're able to understand water, waste, and energy, if you're able to manage it very well, we will be able to drive it easily. So you should be looking at, you can start small. You can look at MP Birla itself and try to look at how much of water is consumed, how much of waste is generated every day, how much of energy is consumed every day. And it's not a big task. We are doing it. Currently, I'm associated with Cambridge Institute of Technology. Every day, in fact, MBA students are doing the energy audit. It is happening from last 10 days. Out of their interest, they look at, how do I look at energy in my institute? We have a 12-acre campus. Across the campus, they go around, do the energy audit. It is possible, right? That's number one. So let's look at how do we reduce waste, right, in organization. And if you want to learn before you get into job market, you should study right now and look at, can I make this zero waste campus in our own way, right? And if you want to do that, I'll be more than happy to host you at Cambridge, because we are the first zero waste campus under VTU. In fact, about 3-4 months back, Commissioner's office came, Police Commissioner came and visited the campus, and we have set up a system in Commissioner's office and helping them to drive zero waste in the Commissioner's office, right? Anybody who is interested to drive that, please do let me know. No, they can visit, and we could replicate some of it, in our own way. Basically, that will give you an idea of. Otherwise, I know sitting here, you can't visualize what am I talking about when I look at WWE, right? When you see by yourself, you would know what it means. Then you can extrapolate that in the corporate context. And believe me, we are investing a lot of time and energy and money in the organization to drive this, right? I'm dealing with a client where we are looking at developing a huge learning module for the entire organization only on waste management. They are into automobile. Right? There are more than 15,000 employees there. Can you imagine we are driving waste management for 15,000 people? It's not just BBMP. All of us have to be part of this. Anyway, so carbon reduction, this is another area that you may be interested to look at, right? Carbon capture, reduction, capture, and storage. There are a lot of technologies. Somebody who is interested in tech, you may want to look at it, right? They say that our forest actually has a great storage capability of carbon, right? Whatever carbon emissions that we make, somebody has to absorb it. Our forest is able to do that. Look at, making all the products we are looking at. Can I make a biodegradable product? Somebody talked about biodegradable product, right? Number one. Number two, can we build a product using products so that I can extend the life of that particular component? When it comes to social, we look at DEI. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with this: diversity, equity, and then inclusiveness, right? How do we bring in the people, especially in the organization, with diverse background, diverse culture, everything? How can we bring that synergy is something that we look at. safety at work, community engagement, health and well-being, right? I'll skip this basically, This is very important for you. How many of you are familiar that there's something called as ESG reporting that is required? That's where I think MBA students should be more familiar with it. And basically how you report your financial transactions, right? On a similar line, organizations also have to publish their sustainability reports. And there are frameworks which are emerging. About 2 years back or 3 years back, it was all cluttered, but right now it is not as cluttered as it used to be. There's some clarity. There are global standards, GRI, Global Reporting Initiative that we have, and there's a framework that they give. IFRS, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. Those who have studied at least BCom, you should be familiar with that, right? International Financial Reporting System. IFRS came out about 1.5 years back, about close to a year back. They came out with S1 and S2 reporting, which clearly talks about how do I inform my stakeholders of the risks and opportunities that I run on environment and social, and how do I respond, right? It's already there in place. Then we have, in the Indian context, you can see it's called BRSR, right? SEBI has made it mandatory for top 1,000 companies listed in India to report on BRSR. So you should be familiar with BRSR reporting, right? That will give you an edge over others, right? Ultimately, as MBA students, those who are interested in finance, I'm sure you will be able to look at these reporting formats, right? BRSR, business responsibility and sustainability reporting, right? There are about 9 principles, and those 9 principles talk about all the points that we have discussed, ESG. It covers all of it, and this is derived from a global framework called GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. It is derived from there, and all of us have to prepare that. And as I said, top 1,000 companies, it is mandatory. Out of that, 250 companies have to be audited. That's yet another opportunity for you. If you want to be an assessor, right? If you are familiar with that, you can get the certificate and then you be an assessee, right? There's a huge opportunity, especially become guys, those who wanted to pursue CA. If you are not able to do it, there's an opportunity for you to learn this and do the auditing, right? And believe me, you will have a lot of opportunity, at least for next 5 to 8 years, you will have a lot of business opportunity. Because as I said, right now it is only top 1,000 companies. By 2030, it will become a common reporting standard. At that time, we need huge number of people who are familiar with that, and this is the right time for you to get familiar rather than when the market is full of auditors, right? At that time, instead of learning that, you should start learning right now. And it's very simple. If you go to SEBI website, if you download the BRSR, it's pretty simple, straightforward. You can look at what they are doing. And then there are a lot of companies which are publishing online, right? You can go to any companies which are top 1,000 listed in India. They publish BRSR so that you also get to know how are they reporting. Be familiar with that. And then if you want to do it, you can pick up. You go to Pinya Industrial Area and you tell them, I'm going to do a BRSR reporting because it's going to be mandatory in next 2 years for them. So if you go and talk to them and tell them that I will do it for you, it's a great experience for you and you're helping them as well. Because if they are having BRSR reporting, they will be able to generate a lot of business because customers are looking at somebody who is reporting this ESG. I will place an order to you rather than somebody who is not having it. Right? There's a huge opportunity that we have. Rest of the things I think I will skip. Materiality matrix, probably you can look at it and understand. Basically, materiality is when we talk about ESG and sustainability, how can organizations drive it? What are the top priorities in an organization? To help organizations to identify, we use materiality. You can go to any of the companies, they publish materiality matrix. In this case, we are talking about Honda across all the sustainability areas. This quadrant that we have, it is basically they do a survey of all the stakeholders, which is on this side, and all the the employees, management, everybody, all the key stakeholders are surveyed, and based on the rating, we identify which are the top priorities which are listed here in this quadrant. And you look at all the strategies of Honda, they're all aligned with this. For example, responding to climate change and energy issues. That's why they are more careful in looking at their design of their products, two-wheeler or four-wheelers across the globe. They want to ensure that their emissions are lower and try to look at more than 90% of their energy requirement is met through clean energy. That is aligned with this particular thing. This gives a direction for a company to look at what can I do in the ESG space, right? So these are the points I think, at a high level I have already talked about. There's a huge opportunity for the tech as well. If you are a techie and you want to develop a solution, for example, BRSR reporting or ESG reporting, a lot of data can be automated. Right now, a lot of players are getting in. If you have a startup idea to develop some tech product, this is the right time for you to think about it, right? You can look at how can I enable an organization to generate this ESG report by collecting the right data and putting that in the format that is required as per the reporting, right? I'll skip this part. These are the job opportunities that we have. 468% increase in ESG job demand, right? All of you should be able to grab it. If I were you, probably I would look at this as a great opportunity for me to, start my career, right? 1 out of 8 do not have the required skills in sustainability, and all of you have got some insights today. You should pursue that and then try to look at what are the critical skills that we need, right? To do that, first thing is these are very critical for you. Let me tell you, unless you are passionate about sustainability, you will not succeed in this space. You need to be passionate about sustainability. That's where mindfulness comes in, inner strength comes in, and then intuitiveness. If you have these three things as part of soft skills, this is a reflection of yourself, right, as an individual. And when it comes to hard skills and knowledge area, you need to look at sustainability analytics, data, materiality assessment, GSD reporting, functional integration of sustainability. How do I integrate HR with sustainability? How do I integrate sustainability and marketing? Right? It's quite easy for us to do it, by the way, right? And sustainability integrated business models. How do I design it? These are the areas that you should be familiar with, right? With that, let me, end my session, right? If we have time, basically, I want you to reflect on what are the 2 words that you understood today, and what skills do you think you need help with, and how will you begin your sustainability journey from today, right? These are broad questions. I will leave it with you. If you're interested, please do answer. Otherwise, I know I'm already 13 minutes beyond the scheduled time. With that, thank you again, and I'm open for any questions, right? Anybody who wants to connect with me, that's my QR code on LinkedIn. You could. Any questions? Any questions? If you don't ask me questions, I will ask you questions. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
So you spoke about analytics and ESG reporting. Can you please help me understand what are the analytic aspects related to ESG?
Great. I'm glad that you asked that question, ma'am. It will definitely help them. So, for example, let's say we are looking at water management in an organization, and when I look at, if you visit any of the manufacturing plants, right, it will not be less than 50 acres. And the entire 50 acres is connected with one or the other way. Now, we use a lot of technology to analyze the data in terms of water consumption. Let's say we have 10 processes, right? So, where all the water consumption happens, how much of wastewater is generated, and what is happening to that wastewater which is generated. So, we need data points that we need to collect, and we need to analyze it and find out what is the best way to manage this water in a better way, number one. And number two, what are the critical aspects that I need to look at? For example, if you're in a paint shop, right, in a manufacturing unit, it requires a huge amount of water. Every process, right? And it depends on water. So there the analytics will help us. Can I use fresh water or can I use recycled water? If I use fresh water, what are the parameters that are required? And if I use recycled water, what are the critical parameters? Can I use this recycled water in my process? So that I'm not extracting more water from the nature. Right? We measure that. We call it as net zero is a common term that we hear. Right? What is net zero? You have BEP, right? Break even point. In break even point, what will happen? Your revenue and expenses are same. On a similar line, so when we talk about net zero, we say your emission and your absorption are same. How much of a carbon footprint that you have different ways through which you can compensate that, right? By planting trees, by generating more energy from either solar or wind, etc. In the water context or in energy context, we can be net positive, just the way in which we are profitable, right? We move from BEP to positive. So here in water also, can I be net positive? That means, can I give back more water to nature rather than taking more water from nature? Right? How do I do it? So there are different ways through which data points are collected and analytics can be used. Not only in this context, you look at all processes which require, for example, impact to the environment. I make this table, right? What is the impact? We use LCA tool, which will tell me which are the critical areas. We call it as heat map. Actually, heat map tells us what is the highest impact to the environment that I create. Is it because I'm extracting material from environment, or while making it, or while using it? Right? So I need to use a lot of data points. There we need analytics, which will help us to take the right decision. Any questions? Thanks to ma'am, she has asked on your behalf.
Thank you, sir. It's a good thought for me to connect this ESG with analytics.
Yeah.
I'll work on it. I have to read more.
Yeah, sure. It will be interesting. There's a huge opportunity, as I said, for research as well as for the students, right? So the untapped market exists, at least in India for sure. Right? And to be honest, I want to change the narrative of the Western world, because Western world is saying that everything is created by developed countries, right? All the emissions. While if you look at our per capita carbon footprint, we are the lowest, right, as compared to US and others. Right? But we do have a lot of practice. There are a lot of wrong narrations which are going in, and we can prove it through our data. And all of us have to do it. We always think somebody else has to do it. That somebody else is nobody. It is only us, right? Let's be more conscious of that. Okay. With that, thank you so much. Thanks. I know, and the exact students. I know nobody dozed off. I thought so. Right? I was looking at everybody in the first class itself. I know a lot of students. How many of you go to sleep before 12 o'clock every day?
Not bad. 1%.
Good, I'm glad. Rest of you will go to sleep after 12. I know it's very difficult early in the morning to come and sit, right? So thank you so much. Pleasure talking to all of you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Empibula Institute of Management, I'd like to thank Dr. Basanna, sir, for taking time out of this busy schedule and gracing this occasion, and also orienting with us or taking us through sustainable practices, landscape of what should be known. How beautifully, sir, explained with three P's: Paisa, people, and planet. I think it will take all of us, and I urge you to read the Tata report that sir asked you to read, and ESG reports, which gives you, orientation about what is this sustainable practices landscape all about. And like I sir said, it has a lot of scope for research, lot of scope for doing something to Mother Nature. If you're really interested, we request you to get in touch with sir post this session. And we thank once again for addressing, and sir will be with you all with your exhibition. He'll also be judging the competition. You can go move on to session hall 3 and 4, and make adjustment for your demonstration, and sir will be with you all in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Sir, then we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.